Born in 1973, Pete Evans is now 48 years old. Best known in Australia for his role as food critic and judge on MKR, My Kitchen Rules, but today more infamous for being a conspiracy theorist.
Ooh, that's a good one too.
Social agitator and, in the last few months, a potential Senate candidate. So love him or hate him, we have to give him credit for speaking up, having the passion and the courage to speak up for what he believes in, even to his own detriment. And whilst our liberties are dissolving fast, I think at least at this point in time, having an opinion is still not a crime. But I don't think anyone's asking, is Pete Evans a criminal? I think the bigger question is he crazy?
Because some things just don't make sense with this. Some things just don't add up.
I've heard many media personalities and indeed medical professionals asking that very same question. The president of the Royal College of GPs, Dr. Harry Nespolon, asked the same thing and suggested Pete may need psychiatric help.
He said plenty of other things before.
So let's be clear on one thing. Pete Evans didn't wake up one morning and have a nervous breakdown or a midlife crisis. He didn't just wake up and say, you know what, I'll change my entire worldview and become an anti-vaxxer, anti-establishment, pro-Trump or heretic of sorts. It appears that Pete has held his beliefs for a very long time, but sitting at Dan and Steph's dinner table over a sausage ragu under a Channel 7 MKR contract perhaps wasn't the time or place to raise his concerns. But knowing the level of passion that he holds, it's hard to imagine that at times there weren't glimpses or moments where he discussed these things, and perhaps there were, I wasn't there. But suffice to say, we're not witnessing an overnight breakdown. This is someone who holds a relatively pervasive and long-term set of beliefs. So as a disclaimer, I don't know Pete.
I don't know.
I've not had an opportunity to sit down with him and conduct a psychiatric assessment. I'm basing this video purely on what I've seen, what I've heard, podcasts I've listened to, Facebook groups I've watched, interviews that have happened, and some of the information that's been reported in the media. And based on that, I'm answering a clinical question within my expertise. So is Pete crazy?
No.
And given this is not a formal evaluation and I've not met the person, I'm just providing you with my best guess.
Wow.
But a lot of people are suggesting he's crazy or that he has lost the plot.
You have lost the plot, mate. Such a shame.
So let's have a look and see if Pete Evans meets the clinical criteria for insanity.
Because I'm sharing recipes? Or because I've shaved my head?
Now, first things first, to diagnose, we as psychologists and psychiatrists use a book called the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. And in this book, there are a set of all psychiatric clinical conditions of which people have to meet a set of behaviours and symptoms to be diagnosed with a certain condition. So insanity is not one of the conditions in this book.
Wow.
It simply doesn't exist, although it is a term that people throw around, potentially meaning something else. The closest thing we have to insanity is psychosis. So I guess to ask a more clinical question, is Pete psychotic? So in the DSM, there are a bunch of psychotic disorders, things like schizophrenia, schizophreniform disorder, brief psychotic disorder, schizoaffective, psychosis due to drugs or other substance, shared psychosis, and delusional disorders. For the sake of brevity and to not overcomplicate in this video, I'm going to look at just two domains of psychosis. We'll call them psychotic and delusional. To be psychotic, Pete would need to be experiencing a break from reality, depicted through symptoms such as hallucinations, disorganized speech, catatonic behavior, flat or blunt affect, derailment of thoughts, diminished emotional expressions, disorganized behavior, and depersonalisation or derealisation. But from what I can see, Pete is not experiencing any of these. So whether you agree or disagree with Pete, from what I can ascertain from my limited evidence base, is that Pete would not meet the criteria for experiencing any form of psychotic breakdown. Which leaves us with the other domain of delusional disorder. Delusions are a persistently held belief despite evidence to the contrary. Hallucinations may or may not be present, and function is not obviously impaired. Delusions may be bizarre, like believing you're being abducted by aliens every Thursday night, or they might be non-bizarre, like believing someone's following or stalking you. But essentially, in either case, it's a false belief held with such strong conviction that any evidence to the contrary is refuted or overlooked.
How can somebody take you seriously?
So if Pete is anything in this broader range of psychotic, it could really only be delusional. So let's take a look at that.
I am skeptical.
Are Pete's beliefs unfounded? Is there any evidence to the contrary? Or is his opinion just unpopular and not received by the mainstream or the majority of people?
I don't know what to believe.
In which case, he's not delusional, not without evidence, not crazy, just unpopular and possibly wrong.
And it may be wrong, or maybe there's a little bit of truth in it.
And being wrong and unpopular is neither a crime or a mental health condition. So I'm not going into the evidence for and against all of Pete's claims. That's not the purpose of this video, but I have researched them. I have looked into pretty much all of them. And in doing that, I have looked at the evidence for and against some of his most controversial claims. From things such as giving bone broth to babies who can't take human milk, to toxins and poisons in sunscreens, to government brainwashing and 5G infiltration, vaccine injuries and big pharma cover-ups, coronavirus lies and hidden agendas, through to his ideas on the Great Reset. These days on Google, we can find evidence for anything, evidence for or against anything we want to. For every study supporting a hypothesis, there is one refuting it. When you understand how easy it is to manipulate data, and when you look at the funding behind a lot of big research, it can cause you to have a healthy skepticism.
I have a very healthy skepticism about everything.
We can prove or disprove virtually anything we want. So are Pete's beliefs unfounded and delusional? I'd argue that they are not. Sure, they are not regarded as conventional, but there is an emerging and growing group of people, professionals and doctors, and an increasing literature and evidence base that would support his disesteemed position. To think governments and media don't manipulate and distort the truth and don't play with information for their own agendas would be the height of ignorance. So unless one was psychotic, what would they have to gain from putting themselves out there and speaking these things that they propose are truth, and be willing to lose so much for their erroneous beliefs?
I don't know.
So if we do conclude that Pete is neither delusional or psychotic, as I've claimed to do so in this video, it leaves us with only two outcomes to infer from each of his conspiratorial beliefs. One, he is wrong, or two, he is right. But he's not crazy. Unpopular, perhaps, but when did a difference of opinion become so offensive and reprehensible and worthy of punishment? I mean, whatever happened to our right for freedom of speech? Foundational liberties that we think we've built the Western world upon. What is right is not always popular, and what is popular is not always right. Truth has become the new hate speech. During times of universal deceit, telling the truth becomes a revolutionary act. As for the veracity of Pete's unconventional claims, well, that's for you to figure out. In this age of information, ignorance is a choice. And as John Lennon once said, living is easy with your eyes closed.
Wow.
That's all for now. Take care of yourselves and each other, and have a very happy and peaceful day. Bye for now.